the infant said within itself, its words not of any language man could speak, but of the universal language in one's own heart. The language of emotions, concepts speaking together like music that only Naruto could hear. What could this be? Drums. It's drums. No, it's thunder. No, what is it? Bump, 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 bump. He felt it and heard it more. It's music, but it's out of rhythm. It's so weak. Why would anyone play their drums like this? It was cacophony to the infant, but then it realized what it had forgotten. No, wait, this is a heart. This is Mama's heart. Why is it so weak? He opened his little eyes to display the rings within. To the infant, it was all a blur. It was impossible to tell what he was looking at. Regardless, he sensed a chakra. It was so weak. He heard the breathing. It was weak. His mother was so weak. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was divine revelation. Whatever you believed it to be, it was happening now. Naruto's little hand reached out and placed itself against his mother's chest, over her heart. As if it were the most natural thing in the world, he utilized his yin-yang release. He was but an infant, a child. But he was an Uzumaki, the reincarnation of Ashura and a possessor of the Rinnegan. He had just enough to tell Death that it was not to step in on her. Kushina felt the relief immediately. She opened her eyes cautiously. She didn't feel quite as strong as when Kurama were within her, no, but she didn't feel as weak as she had moments earlier. Her chakra was balancing out, but whatever she'd been relying upon to stay alive was suddenly changed. The rules dictated that a Jinchuriki of the Nine-Tails must die if the beast were to ever be removed. That was the rule. But somehow, the rules had just changed. Someone had just overwritten the rules. She couldn't explain it, but she looked down at the child. She was in awe. Kurama hadn't been the only thing within her to come out, and now that other thing was sharing some of its power with her. But how could one possess such power? She was confused. She saw it seem to fall asleep on her, tuckered out and tired from the exchange of chakra. For a moment, Kushina feared it had died, but keeping it close, she realized that it had not. It was as strong as ever, merely sleeping. Once more, she began to coddle it, giving it a little chakra as well, balancing out, ensuring that they both had enough to survive. Suddenly, there was a crash, and most of the home was blown away. Kushina covered Naruto. They skid along the ground, tumbling and rolling. They would come to a stop where Kushina would begin checking Naruto for injury. He was okay. It seemed she had taken most of the injuries. She felt like a few ribs were cracked, but what was a little more pain when she had just pushed out a baby. She found a safe place to put Naruto and laid him there, hiding him. Ironically, there was a small fox den under a tree nearby, and that is where she would place him. Ripping the hem of her skirt, she would tie it around the tree branch to mark the location of the den. She then turned to face the Nine-Tails with her husband. "Kushina," Minato asked in awe, "how are you even standing?" She shook her head. "I can't explain it, but I'm not as weak as I was before. I'm not dying anymore." "Well, praise God for that. Go guard Naruto. I'll deal with the Nine-Tails." Kushina shook her head. "No, the Nine-Tails is my responsibility, and as an Uzumaki, I am the only one who knows how to properly seal it inside of me. So just keep him distracted, and I'll begin the ritual." Minato couldn't argue with his wife, and so he simply obliged. He would rush toward Kurama, utilizing his many jutsu to keep the beast's attention. All the while, Kushina would begin sealing. She would use her adamantine chains to cover the area in a dome, creating a barrier. Kurama had not noticed it yet. He was too busy facing Minato. Once this was done, Kushina opened her shirt to expose the 8 trigram seal. "Ugh, it's completely ruined," she said as she looked at the warped symbols. The masked man had not been careful with the seal. He hadn't dared attempt to crack the code to the vault where the beast was stored. Instead, he had completely broken it. She would begin the process of replacing the seal with a new one. Given that she was a bit more experienced in these things, she was able to craft a seal even stronger than the last one. Once she was ready, she would fire out her adamantine chains at Kurama, which would grab him. At the very least, he had a single chain for each tail, though Kushina would later attempt to chain up not only the tip, but the base of each tail. A few around his legs, his waist, and one around his throat. With this, she managed to choke off a roar and a tailed beast ball before it could fully form, causing the half-finished attack to explode in Kurama's face. With him dazed, she began to pull him to her. Minato would teleport in. He saw that she was struggling though, so he began to funnel what was left of his chakra reserves into her to give her more strength. The beast attempted to claw and stop itself, attempting once more to cry out in rage before Kushina also chained up its snout. She kept pulling until suddenly she began to bring it into her. She then began to take extra chakra from Kurama with which to boost the seal. Minato thought it was ingenious. She was using her tailed beast to seal away her tailed beast. She was making a prison out of its own chakra. Kurama himself noticed this and thought how humiliating it was, not only to be sealed inside of a human, but to have his own power used against him. If only he had killed her when he had the chance. She pulled him in. As soon as this was done, the seal on her stomach spun in circles, each circle and layer spinning in different directions until symbols like chains covered the seal. She hit her knees. Minato came to her side. Kushina! She took his hand and gasped a breath as her face was twisted in anguish. It's okay, Minato. Kurama's just really angry. His hatred, Minato kissed her cheek. It's gonna be okay. Remember our exercises, alright? What's the opposite of hate? Love. Minato nodded. Love. You, me, and our little baby. We're a family. You're surrounded and loved, bathed in it, wrapped up and clothed in it. My life is dedicated to you and our child, so take a breath. Kurama may be more hateful now than ever, but you have more love now than ever. Kushina nodded. She looked up into the skies and took a deep breath and let it out with a sigh as her body seemed to relax. She smiled and laid her head against Minato's chest. Minato would lift her up and bring her to the tree in which he would lay her down. In the den. Naruto's in the den. Minato would reach in and feel a cloth covering. He would pull the tiny child out and into his arms. For as many loud noises that had just rung through the heavens, and for as much earth-shattering action they'd all had to face, the babe wasn't crying. Heck, Minato felt half ready to cry about the previous events, but Naruto seemed to be at peace, and somehow that brought peace to Minato. He would deliver the child to his wife. Placing the baby in her arms, he would hold on to them in a hug. He took a second to rest, catching his breath. He wasn't done yet though. He would wrap his arms tight around them and then rise to one knee. He would utilize Flying Raijin to get them back to Konoha. He would then lift Kushina up into his arms as she held Naruto. He would rush to the hospital where they'd both be admitted. Minato himself would receive a little treatment from overexertion, but he was mostly fine, and even better still, Kushina and Naruto were declared to be perfectly healthy. Minato would then survey the damage done. The casualties were so many that a hard number so far could not be determined, and every hour more survivors were found. In the days after, more bodies would be discovered too. It was sad to Minato, as it could not be known if these people died because the Nine Tails had killed them, or if they had died waiting to be rescued. One of the worst things he had to do was tell his predecessor and mentor Hiruzen that Biwako wasn't coming home. Of course, Hiruzen expected as much, as she was there the moment the Nine Tails escaped. All in all, Hiruzen handled it well, but as Minato looked deep into the man's eyes, he could tell that a part of him had died. Minato attempted not to bring such things home with him, but it was hard to do. When you were equal parts husband, father, shinobi, and Hokage, it was impossible for there not to be any overlap. Kushina would comfort her husband, telling him it wasn't his fault. But Kushina, I chose our son over our village, and people died. A good Hokage would have sacrificed one life to protect the village's most dangerous asset. She nods. Yes, but a good father would move heaven and earth to save his child. You're many things, Minato, and not always will these things agree with each other. You can't hold on to the split-second actions you took without time to think. Instead, be grateful that your wife and child are still alive, and pray for those who don't have it as easy. Minato nodded. I am. That's why it hurts so bad. That's because your heart is enormous, Minato. You suffer with your village, and that itself is proof that you're a good Hokage. Don't let it get to you. Kushina stood. Why don't you go spend some time with Naruto? I bet that'll help you remember your blessings. Minato nodded and stood up. He made it to the baby's room. There Naruto was, in a little orange jumper. It was so adorable. His hair was the same color as Minato's. The babe was asleep in a crib. Minato watched the child sleep. It had been told to him that there was something different about the child. During examination, the doctors noted that the baby had strange eyes unlike any on record. It had been believed by the Uchiha that these were the Rinnegan, though they were unsure how they manifested into Naruto. Some wondered if maybe he were the reincarnation of the Sage of Six Paths, or perhaps if he were the byproduct of genetics that were somehow hidden within the genome of both Kushina and Minato. Whatever it was unknown. The people believed this to be a sign. Some said that it was a sign that Naruto would one day lead to their village's salvation. Others believed that he may one day lead to the village's annihilation. Minato, though, he didn't think either of those things. When he looked into his son's eyes, he didn't see a creator or a destroyer. He simply saw his son, and knew that he would do the best he could to train up his child the way he should, to teach him to be a proper man, good, kind, and just. In the months afterward, the fallout from the village's assault was still being felt. Remnants of scars plagued the village and caused distrust within communities. This led to a proposition that the Uchiha's placement in the village should be changed. The proposed spot of the new Uchiha compound was on the edge of the village. Of course, Fugaku did not appreciate this, and frankly, Minato didn't either. They both knew that this was a ploy, a punishment, a way of saying to the Uchiha that they were no longer a true part of the village. When Fugaku spoke up, Minato supported him. He showed that the area, while vacant, was far from prime real estate, and the prestigious Uchiha clan deserved far more respect than the piece of land would have offered them. And so Minato turned to Fugaku and told him to choose for himself where he wanted the Uchiha's new compound to be. Fugaku chose a place in the center of the village. This upset Danzo, but he said nothing about it until after the meeting. Minato would ratify the new placement of the Uchiha's home and would congratulate them, telling them that after the village was cleaned up, they were free to return to their old compound or remain in the new one, whichever they decided. This caused Fugaku to regain respect for Konoha's leadership and felt as if Konoha truly could value their presence. Minato would explain to Fugaku the reason why people were suspicious of the Uchiha and why it was that Konoha was cautious in the deployment of the night of the attack. Fugaku was still sore about it, but Minato informed him that not only had the Sharingan's reflection been seen within Kurama's eye, but Minato himself had fought against a Sharingan user, the same who had attempted to use the beast against the village. He told him that due to his own eyewitness testimony, he could mostly clear the Uchiha, but there were still some who believed this to be an inside ploy, and that those feelings, especially in the bitterness after the deaths and destruction of so many people and places, were only natural. People needed closure. They needed some place to be. They needed somewhere to place the blame, to feel as if they had gotten justice, and that so long as the perpetrator was on the loose, people would search for a scapegoat. It wasn't anything personal, it was just the way people reacted when their hearts were in so much pain. Fugaku hated that his clan was being blamed, but Minato's words forced him to put himself in the shoes of someone else, and that caused his wrath to further waver. Honestly, Fugaku had to say that Minato was a true leader, and a man with a tongue as sharp as any blade. The Uchiha were all such emotionally vulnerable people, and so often they could fall into a self-pitying hole. But Minato had forced Fugaku to view the situation through the eyes of others, causing him to understand how they could see things the way they did. And so Fugaku took that back with him to the clan's meetings in the Naka Shrine, and due to Minato's words, his dedication to listening, and offering proper respect, they decided to trust him to smooth things out, and the idea of a coup was put to rest. Danzo, however, approached Minato not long after, telling him he thought it was dangerous to put a clan as unruly as the Uchiha in the center of the village. After all, if Minato was wrong and the Uchiha were truly behind this, the entire village could be at risk with the perpetrators at its very heart. But Minato silenced Danzo and began to try to work his point of view into agreeing with Minato and admitting that what he had done was the best course of action. Listen, I understand what you mean, but you have to remember, it was my wife that was attacked, and I fought with and spoke with the one responsible for this, and I can verify that it was not any Uchiha registered in Konoha's current database. Just because they had a Sharingan doesn't mean that it's an Uchiha. It simply means that someone, likely during the Third Shinobi World War, pilfered a few Sharingan. After all, we found the bodies of many blinded Uchiha during the war. It's not impossible. It's even probable that it was someone from the outside. But even still, if the Uchiha did do it, then it wouldn't be such a bad idea to keep them at the center of the village. That way we can keep a better eye on them. At the edge of the village, they can do whatever they want, but in the heart, every eye will be on them and they won't be able to do anything. Danzo hated to admit that Minato's point of view made a lot of sense. Fine, we will do things your way, but if anything goes wrong, I will hold you personally responsible, and see to it that you're removed from office, Lord Namikaze. Nothing happened. The Uchiha clearly were not to blame, and with this loyalty that Minato had shown them, they'd become just as fiercely loyal to him. While the village had been horribly damaged by the Nine-Tails attack, every day Konoha was getting stronger, and it was all due to the leadership of Minato. However, one bad did come from this. Minato had missed his meeting with Kumogakure. He had been planning to go in the time after Naruto's birth, but with the village under attack and Minato having overexerted himself, it was just time for him to rest and focus on rebuilding. But due to him not being able to go to Kumo, and likely also because of the attack on the village making them look weak, Kumo re-entered their hot stage of the war, bringing battle back into the world once more and continuing an old conflict that had seemingly drawn to a close. But Minato, the Uchiha, and the best that the Hidden Leaf had to offer led to Kumo being pushed back. Eventually, Kumo would recognize that the war was not going anywhere and was merely going to cost them in the long run. They considered a peace treaty. But something more than this, there was a secret greed in the heart of Kumo. They were a very powerful nation, but they were cunning as well. They wanted to begin stockpiling Kekkei Genkai to understand how they worked in hopes that they could maybe transplant such techniques into their own people. building of super weapons and stockpiling of power. They were truly the biggest threat to Konoha right now, and that was obvious. So when the Raikage offered peace talks, Minato decided that it would be best to hear them out. Kumo would send their ambassadors to Konoha to begin peace talks, and they were mostly productive. Finally, it began to seem that the last embers of the Third Shinobi World War might burn out, and Konoha would finally have peace. That was until that night. Minato was lying in bed next to his wife when he received a call. The phone rang and awakened him from his slumber. Sitting up, he looked at it and answered. What is it? On the other side was the somewhat frantic voice of Hiyashi Hyuga. Lord Forth, we have a problem at the Hyuga compound. We need you to come immediately. Minato sighed. I'll be there in a second. He hung up the phone and returned it to its place. What is it? Kushina would ask, obviously drowsy herself. Something's going on at the Hyuga compound. I need to go check it out. Just go back to sleep, Ku. I'll be back shortly. Minato would grab his gear and throw his Yondaime Hokage Haori over his flak jacket and make his way to the Hyuga compound. He walked through the gate, remembering that just earlier in the day they had celebrated Hinata's 3rd birthday here. As soon as he entered the place, he would see Hiyashi standing there, holding Hinata in his arms. Minato would notice that there was a dead body nearby. He would walk to Hiyashi and kneel down. Are you okay? Hiyashi nodded. Both me and Hinata are okay. Minato let out a sigh of relief. That's good. He looked at the body. Would you like to tell me what happened? Hiyashi nodded. It was the middle of the night. I was awoken by the sound of my daughter screaming. I rushed outside to see an unknown assailant attempting to flee with her over the wall. I rushed out and without a second thought shut down his entire chakra pathway system by attacking the never-ending in his solar plexus. I rescued my daughter and removed the mask of the assailant to see it was who? Minato asked. It was the ambassador sent by Kumo. Minato suddenly hit full understanding. Those lying bastards. This wasn't about peace. This was a spy mission. Minato put his hand on Hiyashi's shoulder. Don't worry, this will all be okay. I'll be sure of it. He looked down at Hinata and put his hand on her shoulder. It's all okay now, Hinata. Everything's okay. After that, Minato would pack up the body of the Kumo ambassador and send it back. At first, Kumo attempted to pin blame on Konoha, insinuating that this was some sort of ploy and would result in the continuation of the war unless justice was delivered. Minato would tell them that the Kumonin attacked one of the many sovereign leaders of Konoha's prestigious clans, and that this was, in fact, an act of war. He threatened that he would not rest until Kumo was a smoldering crater. He told the Raikage to test him, reminding him of what happened during the Third Shinobi World War, how Minato single-handedly killed over 1,000 Iwa Nin all on his own, and how he had outsped both A and his brother B during battle, with their lives being in his hands. He reminded the Raikage that he spared them, but next time he would spare nothing and no one. He told the Raikage that the only way for him to get out of this was to accept the peace treaty. After a few days of deliberation, Kumo sent back word that they were ready to sign the treaty. Minato would in turn sign it as well. He would inform the Raikage that he was lucky that nobody in Konoha was killed, otherwise Minato would not be signing a treaty but instead a death warrant. With this finished, peace returned to Konoha, and Minato was finally able to take time off to spend with his family. Naruto slowly grew until one day he would be admitted to the academy for teaching. Minato was certain that Naruto would become something great. His eyes were proof, and already they had changed so much. A simple action saved Kushina, Minato's life, and that cascaded into something that could have gone 1,000 other ways. Minato couldn't wait to see what Naruto would do next. Minato sat at the table, sipping on a fresh cup of coffee. He was looking down at a piece of paper, and he just couldn't help what he saw. He looked up at Kushina. Have you seen this, Kushina? It's absurd, he said. Kushina looked back. Oh, are you looking at Naruto's report card again? Minato nodded and dropped it down on the table. History, A. Math, A. Science, A. Ninjutsu, A+. Kenjutsu, A+. It is insane. When I was his age, it was a struggle just to reach B-, and he's acing everything. How is it possible? Kushina let off a little giggle as she finished cleaning up after breakfast. He's gifted. Gifted with that Rinnegan, he said. He thought about it. Naruto was always capable of seeing things. He was observant and claimed that he could even count the flaps of a hummingbird's wings. But beyond that, he was endowed with a photographic memory, it seemed. Whether that was based on his particular dojutsu or just because he truly was a gifted mind. Either way, what this meant was that he was super intelligent. He observed everything in the finest detail and then never forgot it. No, it was more than that. It wasn't just that he was observant. He could have any single technique displayed to him once, and no matter the rank of the jutsu, he could accomplish it. At his age, with his level of chakra, some of these were supposed to be impossible, such as the Flying Raijin, which not only was insanely hard to master, but also came with a stamina drain that would kill most children. But Naruto shrugged it off as if it were no biggie. Minato attributed that to his Uzumaki bloodline and their notoriously large chakra reserves. He looked up at the popcorn ceiling of their dining room and attempted to make constellations out of each tiny crumb. Naruto was the ultimate ninja. He had what it took to become the most legendary ninja of them all, and it was of Minato's mind that Naruto would surpass him. No, Naruto would surpass Hiruzen, Tobirama. There was a chance that Naruto would surpass every ninja to ever exist. There was a chance that Naruto would surpass every ninja to ever exist in Konoha, maybe the whole world. And on top of all of this, Naruto had a kind and gentle heart that Minato considered to be his only weakness. No, it's because he has a kind heart that Naruto will be the strongest, Kushina had said in some time long past when told of Minato's views on this. His kind heart will guide him to make proper decisions that will save the lives of as many people as he possibly could. Perhaps Kushina was right. Maybe Naruto would, and if he did, then that was a wonderful thing. Minato couldn't help but be filled with a certain kind of pride, and he hoped to provide for his son every opportunity he needed to become something great. And that seemed like an easier task the more days went along, the more people recognized Naruto for his extraordinary talents. Naruto zoomed down the stairs, skipping the last 3, hitting the ground, cushioning his fall by squatting slightly using his knees to absorb the recoil. "I'm off to the academy," he shouted. "Okay, be safe," Kushina shouted back. Minato smiled and shook his head. Why is our son even still in the academy? I've seen others with far less attention become getting far younger than him and make chunin by his age. Kushina sat down at the table with her own cup of coffee, having finished this moment's chores. You know full well why Naruto's still in the academy. He's afraid of being lonely. He wants to be around people his age. I understand that, but his attachment to the others will have to end eventually. The path of a shinobi can be a lonely one, a path overrun with bodies of comrades and enemies alike. Perhaps so, but all the same, we should let him enjoy his life as it is right now, Kushina said. He will be a wonderful shinobi one day, that's for certain. But until then, let him enjoy his youth. He has all the time in the world to change the world, but his childhood only lasts a few years. Minato heard what Kushina said and nodded in understanding. After all, Minato himself wasn't that different. Let Naruto move at his own pace, huh? Well, I suppose there's no harm in that. We're at peace right now. Naruto ran through the streets, past the open shops, and was greeted by each of the shop owners. One of those selling various forms of produce would toss a crisp and fresh red apple to him. Be certain to give that to Iruka-sensei when you get to school. I'm sure he has his hands full with all of you kids. He deserves a treat. Naruto smiled and waved. Will do. He continued running. As he ran past, he saw a cart move into the road. Naruto simply smiled. Those working by the cart grew nervous and held up their hands. No, wait! Slow down! You're gonna... Naruto would run up the side of the wall of a nearby building and jump from the side to avoid everything. He would then keep running. He'd look back and stick at his tongue. Nyeh. As soon as he turned his attention around, he plowed right into Sasuke, the two of them taking a rather painful tumble with each other. The two laid on the ground, groaning. Naruto sat up and checked the inside of his mouth for blood, seeing if he had bitten his tongue during the collision. Sasuke sat up and reached for his head to see if there was any blood there. Of course there wasn't, but there was surely going to be a rather large bruise on his head. Thankfully, it would be hidden by his hair, but it was going to be there. Damn it, Naruto. For someone who supposedly possesses the most exalted eye of them all, you don't pay attention to where you're going. Naruto looked over. Well, you've got a dojutsu too, or are you telling me that the Sharingan couldn't see me coming? I didn't have it activated, jackass, Sasuke shouted. You see rings in my eyes? Neither do I, asshat. The two boys stood ready to take this to the next level until Sakura stepped in. Calm down, both of you. You both should have been paying attention. You're about to become shinobi. Paying attention is the most important part of our work. Now calm down and let's just get to the academy. Naruto and Sasuke relented. The three of them began to walk toward the academy for their daily lessons. Even if it didn't always seem that way, Naruto and Sasuke were actually best friends. It was always said that you could only really fight with true friends, and that was not lost on Sasuke and Naruto. They had a bitter rivalry going with each other. Sasuke came from a home with high standards, and it always seemed that Sasuke fell short of those expectations, all while his elder brother Itachi exceeded expectations. And as if that weren't insulting enough, Naruto had to be born with the most reputed dojutsu in the world. Something that was said that only a bearer of the Sharingan could awaken. Sasuke scoffed and waved it off though. Only special people can get the Rinnegan, Sasuke said. But it's overblown. The Sharingan is better. Sasuke was always attempting to tell Naruto that his Rinnegan didn't mean anything. Naruto always fired back by reminding him that the Rinnegan was the next in line after the Sharingan, but Sasuke scoffed at this, telling him if that were completely true, Naruto would have a Sharingan as well. Sasuke posited that the Sharingan wasn't a lesser form of the Rinnegan, but something that instead came from the Rinnegan. And while the number of techniques that the Rinnegan came with were larger, the Sharingan's abilities were more varied and specialized for the user. In other words, instead of getting the same 6 abilities, the Sharingan substituted them for one shared ability, the Susanoo, and 2 unique abilities. Sasuke was adamant that the Sharingan was somehow the evolved form of the Rinnegan and had potential that surpassed it. The Sharingan didn't need all the bells and whistles of a ringed dojutsu. It was simple and straight to the point, and deadly effective. Sasuke was planning to prove why the Sharingan was superior to the Rinnegan. This bitter rivalry spurred each of them to attempt to surpass the other. However, Sasuke was always behind Naruto no matter what he did. Naruto picked up jutsu quicker than Sasuke could, and when he did pick it up, he could do it immediately, even if it was high-level jutsu. Sasuke cursed Naruto's gifted nature, but Sasuke would only be boldened by this. Naruto would eventually plateau, and when he did, Sasuke would prove that his own potential was far superior. The 3 came to the academy where they would be seated. However, before Naruto took his seat, he would put the apple given to him out on the desk for Iruka-sensei. As Iruka came in, he saw the apple and picked it up. He took a bite out of it and was pleased to find 0 worms. He looked around. "Roll call," he said through a mouthful of juicy red delicious. As he read off each name, a hand was raised and a voice shouted, "Here." Once that was over with, they began their school day. As Naruto sat there, he didn't pressure himself or listen too hard. After all, everything they were talking about he had either seen or read at some point. It was true that Naruto was far beyond his level, and everyone recognized it, but honestly, Naruto didn't want to leave his friends or make them feel like he was leagues above them. Naruto knew that Sasuke relied upon their rivalry, and it was that rivalry that kept the 2 of them going strong. He believed that if it came to light that Naruto was so far ahead of him that he could have easily graduated 4 years ago, that might destroy Sasuke. On the other hand, Sasuke was in class paying attention as hard as humanly possible, absorbing every piece of information like a sponge. He was even taking notes. Sasuke had attained the ability to write along the lines with perfect penmanship, even when not looking at the paper, which was something that truly surprised Naruto. Normally, only Hyuga could do that, but Sasuke's need to surpass Naruto had forced him to push his Sharingan past its own limits and into something that other users of the Sharingan could not truly attain on their own. Naruto wondered if Itachi could do this as well, or if it was possible that Sasuke's own family was underestimating his growth potential. As the day came to a close, however, Iruka was certain to let them know important news. This Friday will be when we hold final exams for graduation. The entire class let out a gasp. Iruka held up his hand to calm them and spoke with a smile. "This is the normal graduating age for shinobi, and the educational examiners have determined that the collective grade of the class is high enough to merit a chance at the Genin exam. So study hard, practice harder, and be here on Friday by 8 a.m. for the test. It won't be easy, it'll take all day, so if you're not here for roll call, you will be removed from the examination. So be sure to set your alarm clocks and get to bed early the night before." And with that, he let the class go. As they went home, Sasuke looked to Naruto. "So, finally we're getting our shot at becoming Genin." Naruto smiled and nodded. "Yes, finally indeed." Sasuke looked over at Naruto with a cocky grin. "My score will be higher than yours." Naruto looked over. "Oh? Care to make a wager on that?" Sasuke smiled. "How about loser pays for dinner for the other and Sakura?" Naruto smiled. "I'll take that bet. I'll see you this Friday." Then the 3 went home. On the day of the exam, they were brought to the school. There, they took an extensive timed test with over 154 questions total, all split between 3 hours over multiple subjects. After that, the class was required to take a physical exam to ensure that they were healthy, along with a few strength tests. After that, they would have to display some ninjutsu. Once this was done, they would wait patiently for their scores to come back. When their tests returned, Naruto saw that he had passed with flying colors, having not missed a single question on the exam, scoring a 100%. He went up and got his headband from the proctors and waited outside. As he waited by the swing set, he watched the other children slowly filing out of the academy building. He waited until he saw Sasuke and Sakura. Once they were out, Naruto stood and began to run in their direction. Once they got there, he smiled nefariously. "Are you ready to show your score?" Sasuke returned the grin. "I hope you're ready to pay out your nose. I want filet mignon." They both displayed their tests to show that they had each gotten 100%. "Wait, what?" Naruto shouted in surprise. "We got the same score. How did you answer all 154 correctly?" Sasuke growled at this. "Well, how did you? There's no way that a simple dojutsu is going to make it possible for you to remember all those answers." Naruto and Sasuke began butting heads a bit. Sakura held up her test to show her score. Naruto and Sasuke almost came unglued. "What the hell?" they both shouted in unison. 100.65? 155 questions correct? To say that they were confused was an understatement. There were only 154 questions. How did you answer 155? Sasuke demanded to know. How did you get more than 100? Naruto questioned in frustration. Sakura smiled. Because there was a secret question. The entire test in itself was a question. Did you not notice that some questions in every other row were somehow related to previous questions, and that they all had multiple correct answers? Naruto and Sasuke thought about it. I thought those were a freebie, Naruto said. Sakura continued. Well, they were all part of a single scenario of which there was actually only one correct answer. You had to answer a certain number of questions in the proper order. I recognized this and answered correctly. Naruto and Sasuke were bummed out that they didn't notice. Sakura giggled. Ino and Shikamaru both got 100.65% too. You two didn't even score in the top 5. Naruto and Sasuke could feel their egos deflating. Sakura stretched. Well, I guess that means I won. In that case, I decide where we eat, and you each have to buy me whatever I want. Sasuke and Naruto could not deny that, and so they did. They went out for something to eat and fulfilled their end of the deal. After that, they went home. Naruto made it to his room where he would lay down in bed and prepare to call it for the night. He looked up at the ceiling at the star stickers he had decorated it with. This, along with the gentle light from his dim lamp and the appearance of lights from Konoha's entertainment district, brought him peace. While he was sleeping, the world was going to party well into the night, and that somehow brought him comfort. It meant that all was right in the world. He would think about how he, Sakura, and Sasuke had all passed, and how Irika had told everyone to be sure to come into the academy on Monday morning to be assigned to a team. Naruto was a bit nervous. He didn't know what team he would be put on, with what mentor. He was afraid that he'd feel lonesome, but he decided not to dwell on it, and knew that this was a wonderful thing. The start of his shinobi career. He could finally make something of himself. Not that he couldn't before, but now he was feeling as emotionally ready as he was mentally and physically. He was ready to fulfill his destiny and become a shinobi of renown, possibly even Hokage one day. Naruto would drift off to sleep. He would laze about for 2 days, playing around and doing whatever it was he wanted to do. But he did so all with a slight air of unease. And as Monday rolled around, he was up bright and early, earlier than he needed to be, as in he was already up and ready to go to the academy by the time Kushina and Minato woke up. He had breakfast with them and began to make his way to the academy where he would wait for his team to be announced. How joyous it must have been to realize he would not be on a team with anybody else but Sasuke and Sakura. They were named Team 7 and told to wait in another room for their mentor. Naruto and the others did exactly that. Now, if you recall, during this time, Naruto set up a prank to get Kakashi. Sasuke told him it would never work, but it did. But in this world, Naruto does not do that. You know why? He doesn't want to embarrass his father. Minato is the Hokage, and despite how playful Naruto can be, he does keep his dad's reputation in mind when he does things. And right now, being in what he considered to be a professional setting, Naruto refused to play that prank, as it would be unprofessional and would reflect poorly upon his father. And so Naruto remained silent and waited. It was then that Kakashi appeared for the first time. They were surprised by the way he looked. They weren't sure if he was cool and in style or if he was completely edgy and terrifying. If asked, Kakashi would have told them that it was both. After a short meet and greet, the three of them made their way to the forest to begin their test. They were told that they needed to get the bells from Kakashi and to use whatever they needed to get it done. Well, the moment Naruto experienced 1,000 years of death, he took it to heart. Activating his Rinnegan, something that Kakashi had expected, Naruto began to go crazy on him, utilizing the 6 paths abilities that came with his Rinnegan. This really put Kakashi on the ropes. Naruto would throw a kunai at him. Kakashi dodged out of the way and kept his eye on Naruto until suddenly something grabbed the bells from his waist. He looked down to see Naruto there. He had used the flying Raijin Jutsu to teleport behind him and take the bells. Kakashi looked back up and saw Naruto standing there. Suddenly, he disappeared in a poof of smoke. Kakashi had been facing a shadow clone this whole time. This disappointed Kakashi. He never really meant for them to get the bells, but instead meant for this to be a test of teamwork. But Kakashi wasn't a liar. He told them that he would accept them as students if they got the bells, and so he would. But here was the catch. He told them that there were only 2 bells and that they would have to decide who got to move on and which of the 3 had to stay behind. He told them that this was what they would face in the field. A choice. Sometimes that one of them might not get to come home, and that they would need to carry on without them. The team attempted to come to a consensus, but